Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name's Jeff. Today we're going to talk about two companies, AEHR Test Systems and Applied Materials. And I want to share with you something that I've observed, that I've learned about investing in semiconductor stocks. And I want you guys to think about it. I think it'll give you kind of a new perspective. So why on earth would anybody invest in AEHR Test Systems? Well, I know why. I looked at the 5-year chart this morning, and AEHR Test Systems has returned 1,033% in the last 5 years, which is a phenomenal return. And I suspect that a lot of the people who invested in AEHR Test Systems knew this. They looked at the charts of the recent returns and they went, oh my gosh, I want a stock that's not only returned 300 or 500 or 800%, but 1,000%. So then let's just take a look at the chart for Applied Materials. And if you take a look there, you'll see that this particular stock has returned about 425% in the same 5-year period. So it's easy to see that investing in a small cap company like AEHR Test Systems would be like make you a lot more money if you invested in it 5 years ago. But here's what I want to share with you. This is just an observation. And you know, I've been paying a lot of attention to stocks in the semi sector. AEHR Test Systems 5 years ago sold for $1 and change. So when you're $1 for stock, or $1.60 or whatever, $1.68, when you make it up to $20 a share, that's a lot of doubling and tripling and quadrupling and etc. So you're starting from a very small dollar amount. Now let's look at Applied Materials. This is a huge company, and I just should mention, AEHR Test Systems right now is a tiny company. It's a microcap stock. And Applied Materials is one of the largest companies in the semiconductor equipment, software, and services spaces. So there's really no comparing the two companies as far as what they do. But as I mentioned earlier, they have really big different returns, and that AEHR would have returned a lot more to an investor over the last 5 years. But what I want to ask you is, does this make sense to invest in these small companies? Because this is what I've been doing. But I am, questioning over a period of 3, 5, 10 years whether these small cap companies make a lot of sense. And what are the pros? I think the pros are, if you buy one of them and it's relatively cheap and the future is bright for it, meaning it's growing its income, it's growing its profits over time, and doesn't have any serious setbacks, then you're going to do probably pretty well if the company's growing quickly. And then if you start with a huge company like Applied Materials, for example, it's probably not going to grow as fast. But in all investing, there's kind of a trade-off. So, for example, if you invest in Applied Materials 5 years ago, you're investing in a company that has like many different customers, not just 10 or 20 or 50, but probably hundreds of companies buy their equipment in the semiconductor space. So you know that if they lose 1 or 2 or 5 customers, the company's going to do fine. Now with AEHR Test Systems, I view this as a really speculative, risky play. And I'm not saying it's bad. I have nothing against people who bought shares of AEHR Test Systems. In fact, I was thinking of buying shares myself back in November, December of last year. But what I think we got to realize is, there's no free lunch in investing. And when you buy shares in a microcap company, I mean, right now AEHR Test Systems is probably somewhere around 1/2 of $1 billion. There's potential for better upside, but then there's a lot of potential for downside, meaning, we're seeing that this year. The stocks come down a lot. So my question here is it really worth it to invest in such a small company? I feel that AEHR Test Systems has kind of wedged itself into a difficult position, because when things were going great with EV sales and silicon carbide chips were selling like crazy, and there was a lot of smoke and dope in the sector in 2023, then I think the stock price just went up really high, and I think a lot of the people viewing this video maybe bought AEHR Test Systems. But now you're seeing how vulnerable a company can be when they're depending on basically one company. I think if with AEHR Test Systems, it's on semi, and basically on one product, which is burn-in equipment for silicon carbide chips. So when you're that niche, you're really vulnerable. So I'm interested, you guys watching this video, are you invested in AEHR Test Systems for the returns, hoping for really high returns? Is this one of many stocks in your portfolio? Because I think it's a good lesson, and you know, it's not over. The story of AEHR Test Systems is not over. But I think it's really dependent on EV sales picking up, or at least these power chips, silicon carbide power chips coming back. And we don't know if that's going to happen, when it's going to happen, or if it's going to happen. And you know, I think that AEHR Test Systems is a really good example of putting all of your eggs in one basket, that basket being burn-in for silicon carbide chips. So not a bad company, just a very focused company. And Applied Materials is one that I kind of learned about over the last few months, because they are really one of the beasts. They're one of the biggest companies in the semi space. And they're so well diversified across different industries, different equipment. They are one of the largest manufacturers of semiconductor capital equipment, also software and services. So, you know, they are well spread out across the semi industry. Doesn't mean they're immune from downturns, and semiconductor industry is a cyclical industry, but they have a lot of different streams of income to depend on. So, you know, they don't have to hope that things work out with one particular customer in any given year. Funny story, you know, some of the best companies for very niche equipment are located in Massachusetts. One of them is Applied Materials. They actually do ion burn-in, but for medium power burn-ins. And Axcelis does the same kind of equipment, but Axcelis also does this high-powered burn-in equipment that nobody else does. And some people have said, wait, how come all of these companies that specialize in ion implantation are all here kind of in the North Shore of Massachusetts? And they joke that they were actually, a bunch of scientists were driving on their way up to Maine, and their cars ran out of gas, and they got stuck up here on the North Shore, because you have Applied Materials located in Gloucester, Mass, and then, you know, a stone's throw away over in Beverly, Mass is Axcelis Technologies. And these are the two kind of leaders in the ion implantation equipment space. It seems that what happened is a lot of the geniuses in this particular sector, very small sector of the semi industry, they all went to MIT. And from MIT, after people graduate with their specialties in engineering or chemistry, physics, they got jobs. And the two companies around, you know, 10, 15 years ago were companies like Axcelis. There was a company called Varian Semiconductor, and then their company got purchased by Applied Materials. So Applied Materials has an office in Gloucester, Massachusetts. That's only because they happened to buy a business that was located in Gloucester. One fascinating thing about investing that you learn by paying attention to these semi companies is how vulnerable the small ones are to downturns. And you know, when times are good, like last year, it's like the sky is the limit, you know, things just keep floating up, they just keep going up, kind of like Nvidia has this year. But the small ones are really, really vulnerable to downturns in the stock market. And one thing I've learned is that for investing, there's something to be said for protection on the downside. You know, you never really realize, as Buffett says, you don't know who's been swimming naked until the tide goes out. And the companies that have a lot of debt, the companies that just have one big customer, when times get tough, when spending in their industry decreases and they don't have other customers, you start to realize who's really vulnerable. And there's something to be said for these large companies with a lot of customers. So those are just my thoughts. Interested to know, anyone watching this, are you an investor in Applied Materials or in AEHR Test Systems? And what are your thoughts about the potential returns? As I said, 1,033% over the last 5 years for AEHR and about 425% for Applied Materials. One has obviously a much higher return, but I think it's something in our brains sees that chart and goes, I want a company that delivers those returns. But we don't realize sometimes that this is from, like I said, a very low starting point, $1.68, for example, a share. But now when share prices are over 20 a share, you know, we can't expect this to go up 1,000% in the next 5 years. It just, the numbers don't really work out. So let me know what you think in the comment section. Also just interested to know what kind of companies you guys like to invest in. Is it mostly semiconductors, small caps, large caps, other kinds of tech stocks, other stocks entirely? So write it in the comment section. And if you're interested in videos about semi stocks, microchip, anything related to technology really, I cover that stuff on this channel. And I'm also making videos on ETFs that focus on tech stocks and semi stocks. So if that's something that you'd like to learn more about, subscribe to the channel, click the little button for notifications, and then you will get a heads up whenever I make a new video. Thank you so much for watching today, and I will see you in the next video.